Welcome, everybody, to Vision Untethered Podcast, conversations with inspirational visionary leaders. My name is Jill Simonds, founder of Savvy Strategic Partners. We are a dedicated fractional team of executives who are executing vision, increasing business value, and helping founder owners realize freedom. Our guest today, Tyler Quinn, is a visionary entrepreneur, fitness industry leader, and the co-founder of Alchemy 365, a groundbreaking fitness concept blending yoga, strength, and conditioning. After navigating the immense challenges of leading Alchemy through the turbulence of a global pandemic, Tyler is now channeling his hard-earned business wisdom into a new chapter, helping other entrepreneurs implement EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, to build resilient, scalable companies. His journey is one of perseverance, transformation, and the power of structured leadership. Tyler, so excited to have you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jill.
Yeah, and you're live from the gym
I am.
joining us
Yeah,
today.
where I do a lot of my officing, right? In
Yes.
one of our studio classrooms. Yep, you got it.
Awesome. Yeah, really inspired by what it is you've built and created. I'd love to know first what inspired your journey into business ownership and what led you to this industry specifically?
Sure. Um, wow. It's been a lot of years, so let me think back. I studied English and political science in college, thinking that I was on a track to go to law school. That was
Mm,
the original game plan.
hmm
And in my senior year, before I graduated, I needed to do an academic internship as a part of my graduation requirements. And this happened to coincide at a time in my life when I was really excited about a relatively new fitness program out in the world called CrossFit, which I'm sure people are going to be pretty familiar with at this point. But this was 2000,
hmm
2006, 7, 8.
hmm
Um, so pretty early relatively speaking, in the CrossFit um, life cycle.
hmm
And I decided for that academic internship, I was going to get away from my normal course of studies, and I was going to just do something I was passionate about. And I had the great opportunity to drive from Minnesota, where I was going to college, to Santa Cruz and Walnut Creek, California, and Oakland, California, and I got to intern with a bunch of really cool CrossFit gym owners, people who welcomed me with open arms as just sort of a random guy from across the country who was passionate about something that they were passionate in. And
hmm
and so I will tell you that I did not have a plan to get into fitness until my exit from that internship, and I was given a nice little nudge or kick in the backside, however you want to look at it, by a guy named Greg Glassman, who was the CEO and founder of CrossFit, who really encouraged me to go back to Minnesota and just launch a CrossFit gym. And I
hmm
did not know really what that meant, other than, okay, I need four walls, I need a website, and then I'm going to just start running classes and see how this goes. And fortunately for me, it kind of started, it sort of took shape, and I got a little bit of a snowball effect. I joke now that I sort of succeeded a little bit in spite of myself, because while I was really excited about delivering the service that I was delivering, I did
hmm
not have any real comprehension of what it meant to run or structure a business at that time. So while it was very fun and very exciting, there were definitely moments of pain and chaos in those early years of my entrepreneurial journey. And I think what I'll say is sort of, maybe in conclusion to this first question, is I don't even know if I would look back and say that I was an entrepreneur. Like I don't. I think
hmm
entrepreneurship is people hold that word up on a pedestal like it's a really good thing. I sort of think of it as an affliction. Like,
hmm
you shouldn't pretend that it is what you are if it isn't, and it's not a knock on you if you don't feel like you've got that. It doesn't mean you can't go out and run a company and be an incredibly high impact leader. I think entrepreneurship is really
hmm
about building, right, and creating and from nothing. And I look back, and
hmm
that was one of my biggest struggles. Was I wanted to deliver the service, I wanted to operate my business, but I didn't want to build this thing. And it took years for me to really polish that skill set. So that's how I ended up getting into it. It was very random. I think maybe in the back of my
hmm
mind, I sort of expected it not
Yeah.
work. I almost thought I was
Mm.
sure I'll put in a year after I graduate, and when it doesn't work, I'll get back onto my plan, my course. But it kind of did work, and there was an interesting sort of evolution out of that early stage. But
Yeah.
that's how I ended up landing in the fitness industry.
That's amazing. I mean, I share a lot of similarities and can empathize with your experience coming from the world of following in this path of you go to college, you get a degree, you get a corporate job, or like it's just check, check, check. This is what I need to do. Um, ending up, I mean, I was an undergrad in my freshman year, I was undeclared
Mhm.
as a major. And that was so uncomfortable for someone like me who is very like
Struck.
planned and driven and structured. I'm like, I just feel like I should know, like, what is this calling? So to end up on a path too, I was a journalism major, so I thought I would be a writer. I thought I would be creative writing, which is amazing now as an entrepreneur how much writing I do. And now I've started the endeavor of writing a book this year. And so I'm like, it all just kind of connects in a way that 15 years ago, I was like, well, what exactly am I going to do with this? And I ended up, yeah, just the path that life takes you on. You're like, well, I'll just try this. Like this, I can do this and I can learn this. I ended up in marketing, sales and marketing and becoming marketer by nature and by trade. And then, yeah, so each of the steps that throughout that teach us more about ourselves. So it
Well,
is just a lesson in learning who we are and
it's funny that you have such a similar sort of unintended path, because it's really actually
Mhm,
changed my thought on college in general as I'm getting older, and as I reflect back. It's like I really actually think
mhm.
like the collegiate experience, at least for me, was really about learning how to read and write and communicate and interact with people and live like sort of a
Yeah.
quasi independent life, and those
Hmm.
skills that I was polishing. It wasn't so much so that I needed to take my political science
Right.
education and translate it into my economic driver, in my life as an adult. It wasn't about that. It was just about these like foundational skills that I agree. I mean, I feel like I write a lot, and whether it's
Hmm.
blog posts or letters to our community, it's there's a lot of just like those skills did translate, just maybe not exactly in the way I expected them to. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, or maybe not in the way that the curriculum is ever really the most
sure.
relevant thing. It's never what it is exactly. And I think we can apply that to business too, right? Regardless of if you're running a CrossFit gym, if you're running a fractional executive firm, the core components of business which make you equipped then to be able to speak to the pain points of being a founder and leading a team and growing a business beyond a skilled trade or a craft or require the same components.
Yeah,
So the same is true probably for education and that whole journey.
yeah.
Did you
So
did you learn from that experience? Or what's your take on yourself and calling yourself an entrepreneur now? If it had, does it have a different definition and stigma in your mind than what it did early on?
yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I think what I learned through that initial experience, and of course, you don't learn like a light switch where you press the button and now you've learned this new thing. But like as I look
Right.
I look back, I think what I gathered in, like, let's call it the first 5 years, was this acknowledgement of lack of competency, right? Like I think it was what I
Yeah.
learned was, whoa, I
Mm.
don't know that much, and like I need to check my ego on decision making, and I really struggle
Mm.
with benchmarking. And there's a great book called Who Not How,
Hmm.
and right, and I really struggle with the who not how. I wanted to do everything, um and then you start to I hope it's a reflection of maturity, but as you mature, you recognize, whoa, like, yeah, no, I have some skills, there are some things that I'm good at, and then I definitely have
Hmm.
weaknesses. And my job, or a big part of my job as a leader and as an operator and as a, as a team
Yes.
builder, is about knowing them, acknowledging them, and then, galvanizing them with either other people or resources or tools.
Hmm.
And I think that's the big learning, was like, again, entrepreneurship is a very loaded term or word, and it can be something that comes with a lot of ego. And I think
Hmm.
just knowing where to put yourself in that like on that entrepreneurial spectrum, and honestly knowing where you belong, I think that was the biggest thing for me to learn. It's actually what led me to end up wanting to take on partners. um
Right.
I didn't have
Hmm.
a partner when I started that business, but then I took on,
Yeah.
I joined up with some great people. And I leaned into interesting tools like EOS came a little bit later down the road. 5 or 6 years into my entrepreneurial journey was when I got exposed to traction in EOS. And you start to be much more open-minded to what's out there, the things that can help you. So I think that was the big learning in the early days, was like,
Mm.
you have all the
Right.
answers and you need help.
Yep, exactly. Yeah,
And
that makes a lot of sense. Love
what
that.
about you, Jill? Like you're a couple of years into this new venture. Like,
Hmm.
what are you learning about your entrepreneurial position?
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of fun to reflect to. I will admit earlier on, when someone would say that they're an entrepreneur, my thought would be, I honestly thought you're you're wandering and you're lost.
Oh,
Like, you don't know. It was
okay.
like this weird, like, um, because the ones that would say that too, it's like, and the ones that I knew at the time, it was a venture. It was, they were pouring themselves into something that didn't on the outside look successful, or, just knowing um how hard it truly was. They never really were saying like, "Oh, I own this business," because
Yeah,
they talked about it almost in a way that like they're dabbling in a million other things to figure out what it is they're actually going to create of sustenance that's going to grow and sustain. And that was young, like early 20s is
sure.
like, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur." So like, so what are you actually doing? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what is it you're actually, do you have a business? What is it? And so that was kind of the circle I was surrounded with in early 20s, is like all these like maybe wannabe entrepreneurs, because to them it had this stigma of grandeur and like sexiness.
For
And
sure.
I was not about it. I'm like, oh, well, I know I'm entrepreneurial. Um, and so it was just earlier on, it was just something I was doing on the side, was building things of on the side of stability. I needed the stability of a full-time career. We were young, married, having a family, having kids, buying a home, like that security and foundation and something stable is what helped me have the ability to kind of take and dabble in entrepreneurialism and try some things. Um, Not too worried about whether or not they were going to fail, right? So I had a successful photography business here in Colorado, traveling nationwide, sometimes out of the country for weddings, and portraiture, and thought for a hot minute, like, I could do this fully,
Hmm.
and realized pretty quickly, like, the artist in me um, really needed that more as an outlet than a business,
Hmm.
because I started to hate it. I started to hate showing up for weddings and showing up for portraits when I started that whole thing, because I loved it,
Hmm.
because the stress of it, the demand, and when things were really busy, but it wasn't enough to replace my income in a full-time capacity. I was like, I don't know that I could do this full time. So dabbled in a couple other entrepreneurial endeavors and started two other businesses from that point. I was always consulting business owners, and helping them learn the tools and trades of marketing, of strong content development, of planning and strategy, on this again on the side of a career. And so, I was helping other businesses without even realizing that I had a calling and a passion in helping entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so now I'm very much proud of it,
Yeah.
and identify with it because I love building things.
Yeah.
I love and I'm truly skilled at, and that's where I discovered along the journey that that's where I'm gifted.
Hmm.
So it's helping others rise to their potential and seeing the building blocks to put together the foundational pieces of a business. Like I can, work with this engineer who has no concept really of people management and human capital and how to manage human energy to develop things and get a business in place with them and work with their teams and bring on team members.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I had like a strange like disassociation with that word.
Yeah. Well,
And then now I'm like, no, like that I identified with that. So
it's funny, and I mean, obviously, we're this is like a bit of I'm splitting hairs a little bit, and it's a little bit semantics, but I don't know, maybe for somebody this will be relevant. But you used the
mhm.
word, you talked about being an entrepreneur, and then you talked about being entrepreneurial.
Entrepreneurial. Uh-huh.
And I like obviously there's overlap, but there's also some distinct parts of those two words, and there's nothing like you can I think you can be entrepreneurial and not necessarily be an entrepreneur, and
Hmm.
discovering your entrepreneurial fire and your entrepreneurial passions over the course of your career. Like it doesn't mean you have,
Hmm.
all right, I got to start from scratch and take all this, whatever I have around me and build something that's never been built before. It doesn't necessarily need to be true for you to be very entrepreneurial in your career. And then I think you're
Hmm.
spot on with the like, you know, I love to cook. I don't think that I want to be a chef and start a restaurant, right? And you talked about photography being a passion for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then all of a sudden it stopped feeling the same way. And I think like that would be that's another big honest, like no BS assessment that I think
Hmm.
entrepreneurial people ought to make with themselves when they decide they want to take something they're really excited about, passionate about, and translate it into business. Because
Right.
sometimes it's like that's like taking the entrepreneurial leap is the thing that destroys your passion for that
Totally.
particular thing. So
It can. It totally can. Yeah. I think, yeah. And maybe kind of subconsciously made that distinction that I knew I was entrepreneurial
mhm.
and now I'm an entrepreneur,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's like, no, not only is it just I was doing things that were entrepreneurial, but I had never fully invested in taking the leap and trust, fully letting go of any other security to build something new, and to fully trust and believe in myself to do it as an entrepreneur.
So what was the aha moment? Sorry, I'm asking you a
Yeah.
question. What was
Oh,
the aha
I love it.
moment
That's
for you?
okay.
What was the aha moment for you? Like when did that leap take place? Like when were you like, all right, I've always been entrepreneurial. Now I want to build a thing of my own. Like what
Right.
was that fork in the
And
road?
to fully build something in my own where it was like this is going to be I'm going all in on something because like I said I had built and sold and exited small endeavors, on the side of so as much time energy as I could pour into them while also like, well, I'm still good because I've got a full-time career W-2 status with health and benefits for my family. We're good.
Yeah.
So to fully let go of that, I was actually at a point of exiting that full-time role
Yeah.
in an entrepreneurial organization that I had led for several years
Okay.
and grown and helped become, 10x their profit. And here was this time where this I had hit the ceiling.
Sure.
I had hit the ceiling, I felt like in my ability to fully run that and create and continue to build upon something that someone else started, but I had a different vision for it.
Yeah.
And so when that started to clash, I realized like it's time for me to move on. This is time for me to be in an element that I can truly make an impact somewhere and not feel held like chained back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it was that realization and leaving that organization on great terms, but I was kind of faced in a position to choose, like what path I was going to go on, and I'm like, I'm either going to jump into another career job,
Yeah.
and be hireable, and I don't know, lead a company and sit in the C-suite in some capacity and be very much part of that, or really take a bet on myself and what it is that I envision and follow this vision. So
Yeah.
I chose that.
Yeah. The red pill, blue pill.
Yeah. So
Good,
here
good,
we
good.
are.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good, good self-awareness. And I'm glad you took
Mhm.
that leap. Sounds like it's
I
working
am
out.
too. I am too. Yeah. No regrets. There are definitely, like I said, I'm like, there's, if anyone told me I'd make it even this far, there's been so many times like I should just, yeah, what am I doing? I should
Yeah.
just give up.
Yeah.
But no, all in. Yeah, I think everybody faces that on this journey. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Can you maybe share an experience that you felt trapped in your business or by
Ooh.
your business and what what strategies you implemented to create space for growth and scalability?
Hmm. Wow. Well, okay. I think at the risk, I'm gonna take a little bit of a risk here, and I'm gonna be pretty open and honest with the audience here.
Yeah.
I felt very trapped in my business from 2023 through November of 2024. So not that long ago, when
Hmm.
I was at that point I had not transitioned into my work with EOS.
Mm,
And what I was feeling at that time was, well, I mean, trapped is a great word. I was looking at Alchemy in a post-pandemic world. We had done a lot of work, I thought good work, to try to
hmm.
first of all, survive
Right.
several shutdowns and just like a
Hmm.
complete crushing experience with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Then we had put a lot of good work in to try to rebuild the organization, get the organization back onto a growth track. And I think if I'm being totally honest with myself, which I was having a hard time doing it at that, in, let's call it early 2023,
Hmm.
the combination or like the trifecta, maybe there were more than three things, but of like our cash flow and our we had raised some equity for the company prior to the pandemic at what
Hmm.
was, I felt like an appropriate valuation before COVID, but I was having a very difficult time reconciling the share value of our company with
Hmm.
the cash flow, the revenue, the size of the business, uh, the amount of debt that we had on the books, on the balance sheet. I was meeting with lots of potential, new potential capital partners, trying very, very hard to find like the economic path for the organization to grow again, because we are
Hmm.
not a franchise. It's a very capital intensive business to launch new business units. So we were
Yeah.
cash poor, we were spread thin, and we
Hmm.
holding on for dear life. I mean, I felt like, I mean, I had like one cord in this hand, one cord, and I was just being pulled in all the different directions. And I think maybe I started to lose confidence that I was going to be able to find a path forward. And
Hmm.
that was that might have been the lowest. I mean, look, entrepreneurship has highs and lows. That might have been
Hmm.
among the lowest of the low points for me. Was I just think deep in my heart, I knew I couldn't find the way forward. Maybe a smarter, more competent, more seasoned, experienced leader could have found a path, but I was not able to. And so for a period of time, I was just feeling very stuck, and being stuck and not being able to take aggressive action. I found that
Hmm.
my stress and anxiety is highest when I am not taking deliberate, decisive action. Uh,
Yeah.
and in that moment, I didn't even feel like I could find actions to take. I couldn't even find levers to pull. And so,
Hmm.
um, in the end,
Yeah.
the assessment came down to, okay, well, I think then after 18 months of trying to find the path forward, the decision was made to actually shrink the business, simplify the business, circle the wagons around the highest performing business units.
Yeah.
Maybe a more seasoned, experienced business leader would have made that decision in 6 months. It took me 18 months to like wake up to certain very painful realities of the business,
Yeah.
and do that. But like that, I look back at that 18 months as being as feeling very trapped and very stuck, and not having a whole lot of just not having a whole lot of options that I could see in terms of what I could do with the business. So that's a recent
Yeah.
feeling of being trapped. But yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure the one that pops into my head when you ask that question.
Yeah. I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
Stressful time.
Yeah.
Um, can you share maybe a little bit of your approach and what kind of led you out of that in transition at that point? What strategies you took?
Well, I mean, for one, Alchemy for 10 years has run on EOS. I mean, obviously there's EOS is a big part of what I do now
Yeah.
and what I believe in, and my
Hmm.
new entrepreneurial journey for me. And we worked with an unbelievable implementer named Justin Cox,
Okay.
back in Minnesota. We worked with him
Hmm.
for, I think on average we talk about companies working with implementers for, you know, around 2 years. I mean, we worked with Justin for a few years. We took 3 quarters off with working directly with him, and I felt like the sessions didn't have the same teeth that they had working with him. So we called Justin. We said, hey, we got to get back in the room with you, and we ended up staying with
Hmm.
for the whole 10 years, right, all the way through the
Oh,
pandemic.
okay.
So the first
Yeah.
thing I would say is, like, Justin was an incredible tool, an asset for our company and our leadership team, because he per usual asked a lot of probing questions to get us to think think honestly about what was going
Hmm.
on in our business. And we talk in EOS, we talk about clear accountability, and we talk about GWC, gets it, wants it, has capacity. And I think he started to poke hard at the W, the wants it. Like, do
Hmm.
you still want to run this company? Do you still want to be flying from one city to the next? Right now it's 2 cities. The goal originally 10 years ago had been to have 100 locations around the country. Are you still interested in flying to Austin, flying to San Diego, flying to Scottsdale, flying to Denver, flying to Minneapolis? Like, is that actually what you want? And,
Hmm.
is there somebody else who is more suitable to sit in this seat? Or what are our options? And so I think having a third party who knew the business intimately, but also felt, I think he just didn't feel beholden to, like, our team
Right.
dynamics. He could come in and just, he talks about entering the danger. At EOS, we talk about enter the danger. I think he could force us there,
Yeah.
in a really, really healthy way. And while it took a little bit of time, those questions led to internal dialogue inside of our leadership team. Uh,
Hmm.
at that point, we had 3 people on our leadership team, very close trio of people. We had worked together for a lot of time, a lot of years, and I think
Yeah.
those were the months in which we started to really be honest about, well, okay, well, what are our options? We're either going to figure this out and go forward and grow. Nobody wants to stay in a holding pattern, or
Right.
do we need to open our minds to the idea of, like, we backtrack, we take a couple steps backward to regroup. and
Hmm.
and so I think the biggest tool was Justin and his questions, and his, like, forcing us to be honest about what might have been a really challenging topic for us to address
Hmm.
on our own.
Absolutely.
I think how we ultimately got to the breakthrough.
Yeah, having an objective opinion in the room, or not even opinion, right? Like a mediator, a facilitator, and a guide.
Yeah,
Like they're the guide in the story where you've got a role, you've got a character playing in the, in that story. It's hard to see clearly or make decisions when you've got a different amount of skin in the game,
for sure.
right? In a way that's so that objective opinion is life-saving sometimes,
Yeah,
saving the business.
yeah, no
How,
question. He was huge, and it would have been tough
yeah,
to go there on our own.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and now that's what you do, right? Is
You
if
know,
you've
it's no question. Like my decision when I started to be honest about the W, do I want this and what might I do? It felt like
hmm
a pretty easy no brainer for me to join the EOS community, the implementer community, because I was, number one, I literate with EOS after 10 years of being in the room and using it.
right.
Um, I felt like I had been, front row seat to watching a really great implementer do their work, right, with Justin. And so I think I
hmm
learned from somebody who's very, very good at what he does. Uh,
Right.
and I was very inspired by the impact of the work that he does. And we both talk about wanting to make an impact in our entrepreneurial journeys. And I thought, wow, what way could I jump into something new and make as big an impact, right? As he,
hmm
because I had just gone through this, I had just experienced it. Um, so yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was a
Amazing.
pretty easy jump for me to make.
Yeah, absolutely. How did the excessive involvement, or maybe in that position you were in when you felt tethered or there was so much demand and kind of trapped in the business, what was the effect of that on the valuation and the readiness for any sort of forward momentum, knowing, maybe there was an exit, but even beyond that, just to move the business to a next phase and step? What was the effect it had on the value of the business with how tied to it you were, or the founders together collectively?
Well, let me just, sorry, I want to make sure I want to ask a clarifying question. So you're saying, based on the fact that I was feeling as trapped as I was in that period of time, like what did that do to like the overall value of Alchemy?
Right. Or I mean, if that feeling of being trapped was in fact a result of the business being so founder dependent.
Mhm. Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, what comes to mind is like I think about the number of like high net worth individuals, family offices,
hmm
equity shops that I was talking to,
hmm
and I think like our profile business based on where we were and our size, like the revenues we were doing, and kind of like how
hmm
we we were talking to small private equity shops. So like we weren't looking for a $50 million investment. It was much
Sure.
smaller than that. So I think they were those conversations. Maybe they were a bit more intimate and a little less data and financially driven, right? And I think if I look back on like some of those conversations, I do wonder if there weren't decision makers in these PE firms that were like they could sense on me a certain amount of burnout, maybe a certain amount of like I'm not entirely okay, we'll stroke you the check. What are you going to do with it tomorrow? Because we're looking at your business, we're looking at the financials, and
hmm
we're having a hard
hmm
time uh, penciling out the math. How is this going to get us back to like, let's say, the whatever valuation we want to
hmm
chase down? So I think
Right.
it probably just, that period of time probably just weighed on me, and that weight was
Yeah.
I can't deny that probably was projected out into the world. I mean, I'd love to know, like, if Justin were on this, like, I wonder what he would say to that question, like what he sensed in me
Yeah.
behavior. I'd be curious to.
Well, and whether or not it was sensed, even just on paper, in the accountability, who owns the majority of the decisions or not? Who who if you fell off a cliff, what would happen? What would happen to the business, right? So much of the valuation and asset value in a business is dependent upon that alone.
Right.
When they can see if this person's not here, there's nothing here, right?
Yeah.
So that's
It's
so
why I feel
key.
like, we're still at this point in a transition where, our new operating team is taking over, and there's still a lot that um,
hmm
I'm participating a lot in the day to day of this business still, because it's just never as easy as you think it is to just like
No,
offload your role to somebody new, especially if it's a leadership
absolutely.
position. And so like it's super
hmm
tricky because yeah, you're right. The business can at times feel like it's tethered to individuals. Although we always tried to coach our team to remember that like no one person is the linchpin. We've tried to model ourselves that way, but you know,
Right.
but at the end of
Yeah,
the day, there are certain things that it's hard to break away from certain habits as an operation in terms of like who gets to make what calls on what,
sure.
that's challenging no matter what.
Yeah, it is. It is way easier said than done, right? Alleviating the dependency of the business on any one individual,
Right.
but definitely the founder owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that the mindfulness that it exists as a priority to work toward that and chip away at that as much as possible, as if, you have a plan in place or you have a structure within a business that could operate if something, God forbid, were to happen. Planning as if that were the case means then you've got a structure and a scalable business that's more fun for you to run anyway.
For sure.
Because
No, I,
you're not dying and buried in it every day.
yeah, and I think
Ah,
I'm proud of the fact that we had 4 CrossFit gyms. Like I said, I had mine, and then I took on partners, and we grew that business to 4 locations, and they're still
hmm.
operating. Years later, we sold them off, and they were not so utterly dependent on us. And even though we thought maybe
Yeah.
at the time, and here I am, we're not there yet, but like we're getting to a point where this operating team can run a smaller business,
Mm,
but
awesome.
and yeah, I think that's something to be proud of. Like the legacy is to be able to leave and not have the business fall apart, right? Like that's the real dream as a leader, is that you build something, you put incredible people in place, you drive clear accountability. Everybody knows how they impact the long-term greater good of the business. They know when they wake up in the
Hmm.
morning what they need to do, to a
Right.
point where you can take your hands off the wheel and everything's going to be okay. And I think we're working on that again now with Alchemy.
Awesome. So to conclude us, what practical steps do you give entrepreneurs who are struggling to delegate responsibility while also being able to maintain alignment with their vision?
Oh, well, right now, at the risk of sounding like I'm reading from the book Traction,
Sure.
look, it's fresh on my mind, as you can
Yeah.
imagine, having recently joined the community, and obviously I'm such a big believer.
Fan.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think, well, look, there's some basic tools we talk about, like the EOS time management tool, and understanding what are all the things that you do in a work week, and then making sure that we use the term delegate and elevate, that we're taking things off of our plate that really drain us and that are not in our, like they don't
Hmm.
fit into our sweet spot as an employee of the organization, and finding people who can do the things that are maybe dragging you down. But I think, like, the harder part, that's actually in a way the easy part, because that's somewhat tactical, right? Like you kind of do the work, you use the tool, and you start finding people that you can offload to. The harder part is, I think, the coaching
Hmm.
of visionary leaders, to get them to believe that
Yeah.
they shouldn't be doing everything, to get them to
Hmm.
believe that their lives
Yeah.
and their business will be
Right.
better when they start to accept, not just accept, but really believe and buy into the idea that there are other people out there
Yeah.
who can do some things for you, and they can probably do it better than you do. But that's not tactical. That's a bit more abstract. And so that's where the coaching
Hmm.
comes on, where you really you got to bring people along in that thought process. And so I would say that just
Right.
having that be a front of mind conversation is a big part of what I'm trying to do with the clients that have hired me on to help them run on EOS.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the age old myth that nobody can do this as well as I can,
Right.
as you know, if I want it done the right way, I'm going to do it myself. No one else can take this spot. Yeah, all
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
myths.
And I have fallen
Love
into
it.
that. I can say, like,
Sure.
I've been there.
Totally.
I get it.
Oh yeah. I'm
I
like,
get
how many things I've taken back from somebody because, and then rather than investing the time and energy to go through why or how it is, maybe how they did something or what they did, needs to be here and talk about expectations and talk about and help develop, I just take it back. Like it's just easier if I just do it. And it's a trap that
Yeah,
traps us
totally.
back and holds everybody collectively back from growing. So
100%.
it's a good
100%.
one.
Yeah.
Tyler, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us. If people want to learn more about you, your implementer work, what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, shoot me an email.
All
Tyler.Quinn
right.
at eosworldwide.com. Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about what I do, yeah, hit me up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you
Thanks,
everyone
Jill.
for listening. Yeah. Talk soon.